What I'll do is I'll go through the normal grid of some numbers. We will start changing what we're measuring over the coming weeks because obviously we're moving into a new stage, of challenge. COVID challenge is still with us, but there are other challenges that are coming on as well now, such as joblessness, and whether we begin to see the mental health consequences of the lockdown over the last couple of months. So, but as in terms of as they are at the moment, confirmed cases of COVID, and this is pillars 1 and 2, 1,280. Number of residents shielding in Bristol, 8,152. The number of pupils physically attending school, 8,545. And obviously that's going to be a big question, how we prepare for the summer and how we go into the return to school in September as well. Council tax reduction applications, 5,513. Again, something to watch because it's going to probably be a fair proxy for the economic impact, the lockdown and the ending of furlough and redundancy is having on our population as well. Number of business grants awarded, 7,073, and we're looking to get more money out the door through a discretionary pot that we have as well. And again, there'll be stories in that about who's in, who's out. There's a finite pot of money and lots of need in the city. NHS food aid packages delivered, 3,764. By the way, I'm only suggesting things. I'm not telling you what stories to write, okay? I'm just saying I think there's interesting lines to pursue in those areas. Number of calls to the We Are Bristol helpline last week, 28. So you can see that's dropped quite considerably. So hopefully that initial bulge of need is being met on an ongoing basis. But again, we imagine that there will be more people reaching out to us over the coming months. Number of people emailing for help, 72. Number of volunteers registered, 1,090. Got to find out what's happening there. We had 4,000. So can we just check that number, Saskia, how we've gone to 1,090? Because I think we've got 4,000 permanently registered. Is that additional? Number of rough sleepers housed, 275. And fixed penalty notices is issued, cumulative total 129. And a number of other things. So that's in terms of our overall performance. A number of other areas it is worth sharing with you. The city gathering, which I think we haven't had one of these since the last city gathering. I announced the launch of our Mayor's Commission on Domestic Violence, and I've got to thank Annabelle in the city office for all the work done on that, and Jonathan in my office as well. And we know there's been an uptick in domestic violence, even if the reporting hasn't kept up with the increase in rates. And we've also launched our History Commission, again, which we really want to delve into the fullness of Bristol's story, including supporting community history groups to contribute to that storytelling and personal genealogies as well. And I'll be sharing my own genealogy with the city as a way of trying to inspire other people to do their own. We've launched 2 boards as well to complement the city office. One is a children's board, and Helen Godwin's been leading on this. We published a children's charter. We've done all the work around kids in care and tried to set a city standard. But the case that Helen was making, and then was backed up by Ofsted, was the need to see a more explicit recognition of children within the One City plan. So Helen's going to convene this children's board, and that will become, another strand within the One City plan, talking about how we become a city that is supportive to our children. And we've launched a culture board as well that's being chaired by Lynn Barlow from University of West of England, and one of the conveners of the annual RTS Awards. No doubt one or two of you would have been to those over the years as well. And that is what it says on the tin. How do we, help our cultural sector to survive? How do we get it to flourishing at the other end? But importantly as well, to recognise that culture is not just about going down to venues and events. Culture is, what is Bristol? What does it mean to be here? And they're going to take that wider challenge on as well. And I think there's real good basis for this, in that we've seen the power of our culture sector when it works together in our winning of Channel 4 coming to Bristol as well. That was a real collective effort with so many of the indies, in the city coming together to back that bid. And we succeeded. And so we want to kind of draw on that strength again. I've been continuing to work on the sustainable development goals, and making sure that we drive those into the heart of our economic recovery to make sure that we don't end up with a values-free economic recovery, which would be very dangerous. A dash for growth leading to rampant nothing, just getting money moving again without a mind to the need to work within planetary limits, deliver on equality, take care of gender inequalities, make sure we have decent jobs, not just any jobs. So we're continuing to drive the SDGs, and I'll be speaking at the launch of the Local Government Association's guide on SDGs. And it's worth remembering as well that it was us that took the SDGs to the Local Government Association annual meetings last year and brought them forward as a motion that the LGA should adopt the SDGs. And to be honest, it will be cities and towns across the planet that will deliver the SDGs. So that's very important. And on finance, we continue to face a challenging situation. We shared with you before that we had an £80 million gap. If you add up the increased costs plus the lost revenue and then take away the £27 million government support package we had, left us with an £80 million hole. That's now changed because of the government announcement of an extra £5 million for local government. Support covering 75% of the cost of lost revenue. So with some qualifications to that. So we're working out how that plays itself out in our finances. And there have obviously been some government finances over the last few days, not least the jobs program and the support for the culture, arts and culture sector as well. And again, it won't necessarily come through local government, although we'd like it to, because it strengthens local governance. But obviously it will have implications of demands on our services in the city, and will that ultimately impact on our spending, the spending needs that we have in the city. So that's a little bit of a broad update of some of the key themes that have been going on. But as ever, you can ask about any of that, or you can ask anything you want on any other topic.
Okay. We'll open up for questions then. I won't throw Kofu in at the deep end, so I'll ask Ellie perhaps to go first.
Oh, if I could unmute. Hi everyone. Yeah, just to introduce Kofu properly to everyone, she is on an editorial internship with Bristol 24/7 from the University of Bristol. So hi, yeah, thanks for that. Wanted to ask about the work to try and end homelessness in Bristol. You said the number of people that are still being put up by the council. I just wondered if you've got any more details on how they'll be moved on, and also the money from central government. Last I heard, I don't think we knew how much Bristol was due to get from that.
Yeah, I'm going to have to find out exactly what the allocations are. I think it's one of our, I've raised it time and time again, so I don't want to sound like a crack record here, but I will risk it. Announcements are made, and we know the same time as you do, right? And often after, because we're reading it in publications. We are pressing for that support. I know Homes England have been given the task of working nationally, and that obviously means working with us at what happens to homeless people once they leave the hotels and are back out, to make sure that we didn't end up with that, just tipping out onto the streets again. We've put a big appeal out for private rental homes as well, for private landlords to come forward into the scheme and make their homes available, and they can obviously bring them over to us. We'll pay them a guaranteed rent and manage the property, but we then have them available for housing as well. So that appeal is out there. And we have the big backdrop challenge of delivering homes. And as ever, we are, going all guns blazing to try and make sure we're delivering those affordable homes. I mean, on the exciting front, on that front as well, one of the areas we think we could be taking some real advantages is on MMC housing, modern methods of construction, modular homes. And with the Bristol Housing Festival, we've just brought the airport road scheme through with Bucklock as well, which has a whole number of partners. But that will be, again, it's worth watching because it's the first of its it's the first time Bucklock have been in the UK. It really, and we have found ourselves as a city on the front end of MMC housing, but that allows us to deliver more houses at pace, and that, you know, that is the backdrop challenge to us.
Can I just ask how the response has been to the appeal? Because obviously there's quite an immediate concern and worries that there's going to be more people facing homelessness with possible job losses and stuff coming up. How are you feeling about the response from the private sector and landlords?
I'll find out. We can get the numbers to you on how many have been approached and how many. But with all these initiatives, Ellie, I would never say I'm 100% confident. What I would say is I have a justified, a warranted, and a necessary concern about how it will play itself out, because none of us are in absolute control, right? That's the humility we need as a species, right? That the world happens around us, and you know, we can drive things and we do our best, and that's what we do. But there's a you know, a lot of challenges out there, and there are unintended consequences, and many of the levers we would like to have our hands on at local government level are not in our hands. They're in national government hands. They're in government body hands. So we need to do the job of influencing them as well, and they need to do the job of listening and proactively trying to hear what we need from them. The challenge of homelessness is one that we're responsible for here, but one that we're dependent on national government and national organisations to help us deliver. Solve, as I say.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ellie. Kofu, did you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Kofor. Nice to meet you.
Okay.
So my main question basically focused more about the bailout, the 1.5 billion bailout to the art sector that the government has recently announced. I wanted to know, in terms of much smaller businesses and smaller projects that have had to be put on hold. So Michelle Curtis, for example, and the Seven Saints of St. Paul's, they were looking at expanding prior to the pandemic and the lockdown, and that had to be put on hold. And smaller businesses such as the Watershed and Spike Island have seemed to have a lot of worries about suffering due to this pandemic. I wanted to know how much smaller businesses are being tackled in terms of the art sector and how we plan to help them as well.
Well, this is an example of just what I just shared in terms of that money will be going through the Arts Council. It's not an organisation we control, but it is one that we have you know, a working relationship with, and I would say that's it's a good working relationship at the moment. And I know they're tuned into the challenge of the whole culture art scene being one that thrives, you know, amongst people from backgrounds who are not that mainstream, you might want to say, right? And they know that they've needed to work on delivering a arts and culture sector that's much more inclusive. So we'll work with them to help put them in touch with those more local organisations, and I'm sure that they will want to support them. It's all part of building. It fits within the wider challenge that we've set out of building an inclusive economy and an inclusive city. But I'm sure they'd be open to receiving a call and a question themselves direct about how they'll be prioritising that emergency bailout money.
Thank you very much.
You're on mute, Cecily.
Sorry, I know. I'm just talking to myself. I was going to say, I said thank you. And then Richard, do you want to ask anything?
Yeah, hello. There's something in the cabinet papers for next week about Colston Hall and delays to the project, Marvin, because of the skeletons they found in the cupboard, if you like, which was always going to be a thing of building work. It always takes longer and is more expensive than you think. It looks quite substantial. There's no costs to it yet. Have you got any indication of how much extra it's going to cost and how much the council can afford, given you've already given them quite a lot of cash already?
So there's a couple of things about that. You're right. I mean, you know, when you get someone to come around and look at your house, right, they say you never know till you dig a hole, right? And it's the same with Colston Hall. Very obviously old building. I think a couple of the key things was, for example, we found that the pillars were hollow, if I've got this right. So they're not they're not. They thought they were solid pillars holding up the whole structure, but obviously there's some remedial work that needs to be done then to make sure that they are, up to the task. I'm going to take a risk here by sharing it with you, but I'm pretty sure there is some asbestos as well. But we have to share. And I think I did actually have a look around, and they were finding some places within the structure, some features. I think some old fireplaces as well that needed to be looked after as well. All this does add cost, and as you said, it was in many ways it was inevitable. I can't give you exact numbers right now. I do have them, but I'm just wary about putting them in with you now. If I can, I'll go back and I'll double check and see if I can share those with you. But it is a challenge because money's not, we're not awash with money. But there's a context to it as well. Is the city of Bristol could not sit with an empty, unused, and unusable concert venue in the middle of it. It wasn't an option for us. So it was a challenge that we had to take on, and we had to take it on with as much discipline and as possible and to the best of our ability, and that's what we've done. And I think once it's all done, again, it will continue to contribute to the city.
Does it look like?
All right, we can clarify the numbers.
Well, we can't actually clarify numbers, but I'll tell you why we can't. So it's not just us, there's a number of funders, Richard, involved. So the paper clarifies the work that needs to be done, the cabinet paper next week. But also we're in conversation with those partners about, what the funding situation needs to be. And also there's work being done to identify what you can do with each amount of money, if you see what I mean. So it needs to be a discussion between the partners who are funding the project. It's not just us, it includes the Arts Council and other funders. So that's why the paper itself doesn't detail the numbers, but we'll be coming forward probably by September with a more detailed cost basis to cabinet, and that's when you'll see the numbers really.
Are we thinking millions or?
Everyone's gone mute.
Yeah, it's millions. It's a major project. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Did you have anything else you want to ask?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Cool. Adam, would you like to ask a question?
Sure, yeah. Hi, Marvin. Hi, everybody. Going back to the finances, the figures, if the government is put in 75p in the pound for lost income, is it as simple as saying, okay, it was 80 million, it will now be 20 million?
You're getting into the right ballpark, but it's not as simple as that. But you are looking around the ballpark. There will be quite a bit on this, Adam, with the core cities as well, because our team have done incredibly well here. So, like I said, we've got down into that ballpark of gap. Other cities are in a much worse situation, and that's all in the public domain because everyone's been publishing their numbers. So yeah, not that simple, but you're in the right area. Can I just add though? There's a bigger story around this that's also very important. That is lost. It's not just about sorting out the settlement in and of this time. It's about the future funding of local government. And unless this is sorted, what we're on the edge of is possibly one of the biggest concentrations of power in the country in decades. And that's not an overly dramatic way of saying it, but just play it through. What we've seen over the last few weeks is exposed writ large that local government is drip-fed money and announcements, right? So in some sense, all the powers in Westminster and Whitehall. What we're also seeing is, which can be very deceptive as well, if government announce money from Whitehall and then give that directly to community-based organisations or local organisations, those local organisations are then accountable to who? They're accountable to Whitehall, the funders. So while it looks like devolution, that we're giving money out straight to the grassroots, what you're actually doing is building a relationship between those organisations locally, a relationship of accountability between them and Whitehall. So it's not actually devolution. This is one of the I wouldn't say it's a trick, but it's one of the kind of misunderstandings that's taking place at the moment. So our argument is that as we look to invest and spend our way out of this crisis, that there has to be a mind to investing in the systems of local governance. And I don't just mean local government, I mean local governance. That what we've done with the city office, that whole network of organizations from us, the universities, the police, the health service, private sector, voluntary sector, unions, as we work together to shape our place. Because at the moment, if it's just Whitehall, those organizations bypass that local governance network and they have their conversation with London. So we need that, it's what Robin Hamilton called the devolution deception. So we need a new way of doing finance.
What would be, just going on from that then, Marvin, what would be, how would you do it? What would be your preference?
Well, my first port of call would be to have bankable, what I've been calling a bankable relationship with government. And that's not blank check relationship, but it means that we get financial certainty for 10, 12 years with government. If I look at our infrastructure desires in the city, right? What do we want to do? You know, we've got our old Temple Quarter that we want to bring through, University Campus, the train station, Western Harbour, mass transit system, underground, houses at Hengrove Park, the modular homes we want to bring through, including the site up in Hartcliffe. We know what we want to get done in terms of our big infrastructure. We want to decarbonise the energy system through City Leap. But at the moment, you can see the situation we're in as local authorities, that we're constantly bidding into government and we may or may not get it. So our relationship with government is almost like on a grant basis. And that doesn't allow us to plan with the certainty that we would like to plan. And what that does to us as a local government is it makes us a less dependable partner, because we cannot provide the certainty at the local level that business and voluntary sector organizations want and need. So on a very, very basic level, that financial certainty would give us that more power, more influence, and we would be able to go out then and leverage more money. But let me give you another example of where, again, we're left with uncertainty, not just on the big infrastructure, but on child hunger. So you'll know that last summer we, with Feeding Bristol and the whole partnership, we didn't get any government money to back the incredible work we've done on child hunger in the city. You know, about 20% of our kids at risk of hunger every day, right? So we as a city went out, we put 25 grand in the pot, and the business community, we met over at, what was the law firm called? Over by the harbour side. We met at a law firm. I'm sure you've got the name. Sorry?
Is it Veal Vizards?
No. It was next to the Eye, next to Temple Meads. Anyway, and the business community came up and put £100,000 into the pot. 55,000 meals went out to Bristol children last summer holiday. So we've got an amazing structure here. Now, we expected to actually win the support from government this year again to support our hunger programme. Again, we didn't get the money. All the money's gone up north. None of it's in the south of the country. So again, that undermines our ability to plan not just how we deliver infrastructure, but how we deliver the social interventions that we need, such as tackling hunger. And that would be my first port of call. There's a longer term conversation to be had, which is about more fiscal control, local tax raising powers, and keeping those taxes locally. That's a bit more complicated, as you would imagine. But certainty is what I want first and foremost.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Paul, do you have a question?
Just a real quickie, if you can hear me. Obviously, as you said, the financial situation is not as bad as was thought a couple of weeks back with the announcement of the latest tranche of funding from the government and that ongoing pledge to make up 75% of lost income. But presumably, looking ahead, local government, Bristol is going to have to spend less and make some cut-stroke savings. How much work have you done and what areas are you looking at?
Yeah, we started to do that work. Sometimes we started to think about that right at the beginning of the of the lockdown, and then the weeks leading up to it. We did have that commitment from Secretary of State at the beginning that said, "Look, just go for it. We're with you," which gave us some kind of comfort. But that commitment began evaporating in all its fullness over the time. So we've we've obviously begun to look more and more seriously about at what we need to do. It's not as bad as it was, but it is still bad. That's the key thing. We shouldn't think that this is a good day for local government finance. We're coming off the back of 10 years of austerity, and then we face another hit like this. But it's worth, as you do look at this story, again, I am not crossing the line here and telling you anything, but it is worth looking at what's happening with the other core cities as well. Birmingham, Liverpool, Manchester, Nottingham, because we're all saying the same thing. The support we've had just is not good enough. And without cities, there is no economic recovery. We are the drivers of the national economy. And without supporting us to invest in our populations, not just build infrastructure, not just ease up on planning regulations, without supporting us to deliver the mental health services, the family support services, the back to work, the skills, again, our economic recovery will be a lot weaker than it otherwise would or could have been.